So we're going to talk about beyond capitalism, right? So everybody thinks, or a lot of people think, that capitalism is like the fundamental structure, right? It all leads back to capitalism, all leads back to capitalism. But capitalism itself is a part of an even greater structure. In the current era, right, the superstructure has reshaped itself into an economic and political model that ensures control remains in the hands of the elite, right? The structure is no longer feudal lords or divine rulers. It's corporate monopolies, financial surveillance, and AI-driven governance that dictate economic and social reality. Here's the fundamental flaw in every revolution. The oppressed become the new rulers once they seize power. The workers who fight for better conditions eventually create structures to entrench new hierarchies, right? The rebels who seek freedom ultimately reinforce the control system by giving it a new shape. But here's the takeaway I want y'all to have. The system doesn't fear revolution. It relies on revolution, right? To refresh its legitimacy and to keep people trapped in the struggle. So the loop follows a predictable path where each solution simply shifts the power structure, right? So we start with market freedom. You can build wealth through hard work and innovation. Sounds right. Capitalism encourages markets but allows monopolies to form. And wealth concentrates and workers lose power, right? That's the final result of that. Okay, but here's phase two, corporate capture. Big business and finance will create efficiency and jobs, right? Lobbying and deregulation and privatization is the mechanism of control. And the final result of that is that workers lose independence and wages stagnate, right? But here's phase three, state-corporate fusion. The government will stabilize the economy for everyone. You heard that too, didn't you? Bailouts for corporations, AI-driven financial controls, and economic surveillance. The state becomes a tool for corporate interests, right? But here's the next phase, digital feudalism, right? Or what I like to call corporate communism, right? People disagree on the title, but it definitely is a feeling. AI and automation will improve life and guarantee security. AI control finance, social credit, and full spectrum surveillance. People become permanent economic dependents under corporate rule, right? But here's actually the fifth phase. Collapse and reset. We must break the system and start something anew, right? Revolution, social unrest, or economic collapse. Any of the three. A new version of the same system emerges, beginning the cycle again. So where are we right now in phase three? State and corporate fusion, right? Moving into phase four, corporate socialism is morphing into digital feudalism, where workers are economically and socially locked into a controlled financial system with no escape, right? But here's why it works for the ruling class. If workers comply, they are extracted from. If workers resist, they justify new control measures. If workers revolt, the system reshapes and refreshes itself. Do you see the greater structure that contains capitalism? Here's the ultimate trick. The illusion that revolution or resistance will break the cycle when in reality, it merely resets it. So here's how rebellion feeds the system, right? Like the mythological battle between God and Satan, resistance often strengthens what it opposes, right? So capitalism versus socialism, the real struggle is between centralized and decentralized economic control, not left versus right. Workers versus corporations, the middle class exists as a buffer to absorb unrest, preventing true economic shifts, right? AI as a tool of liberation, it is more likely to become an instrument of total economic surveillance. Here's the paradox. Governments need crises to justify control. Corporations need exploitation to justify profit. The people keep looking for a savior, right? Political or technological, but every savior ends up reinforcing the system. Here's the takeaway. Even when people think they're escaping economic oppression, they are shifting it into a new form of controlled struggle. But here's the ultimate realization. The door was never locked. The only true way out, right, is not through conquest or really even through revolution, but it's through rejecting struggle itself. Money is a construct, so why fight for more of it in a system designed to extract from you? Corporations manufacture artificial needs, so why pursue the illusion of material security? Governments require obedience, so why keep looking to them for solutions? Breaking the cycle of the greater superstructure that capitalism is contained in is about decentralizing economic control permanently, right? So power cannot reconsolidate, refusing to engage in performative struggles that simply refresh the system, and building parallel structures that function independently of the state corporate control. The real issue is that people need to let go of their fight for meaning, or they will always seek struggle, unknowingly fueling the superstructure. So the main way out is this. Every economic, political, and philosophical system has tried to fix the world, right? But all have failed. Here's the reason why. Because every solution has reinforced the system of control. Control, right? Okay, The only true revolution is one that refuses to recreate power structures. The only true escape is to realize that there was never a prison to begin with, right? So, and this is one of those things where it's so unsatisfying to me. But it's unsatisfying to a lot of people. We don't want to be told that the door was never locked, right? We want to pick the lock, fight the guard, right? And earn our way through. But if the real exit is walking away from struggle itself. So we're going to talk about what this looks like in a more modern sense. Here's what walking away from the struggle would be. It's not checking out, and it's not isolation, but it's refusing to play by the system's rules, right? So you're not waiting for a political movement to save you. That is not what this means. You're also not fighting the system head on, because that only gives it legitimacy in the superstructure. And you're also not hoping for technological breakthrough that fixes the economy. Here's what it means. Creating parallel systems of economic and social survival that do not rely on corporate state control, practicing controlled disengagement, minimizing participation in financial surveillance, in corporate debt traps, and in extractive economic models, and focusing on decentralized, self-sustaining structures that prevent power from re-centralizing in a new form. Breaking the superstructure loop means withdrawing consent from the system in a way that renders it irrelevant, right? Not in a way that fighting it in a way that makes it reinforced, right? Because when you fight it, it legitimizes it. So what does this look like in daily life? If the system was built on control through finance data and dependency, then the answer is to reduce exposure to those control points, right? Shifting to local or regional economies, worker-owned businesses, cooperatives, barter networks that reduce reliance on corporate monopolies, minimizing use of central banking and credit, favoring credit unions, alternative currencies, localized financial networks. And I'm not talking crypto when I say alternative currencies. Y'all just lazy in the way we develop alternative currencies. I don't know what to tell you. Back in the day, we had ink. Okay, rejecting the debt economy. Living within means, reducing unnecessary purchases, and depriving corporations of artificial demand, right? All demand for them should be at a zip tie, should be mandatory. And rebuilding self-sustaining social structures, prioritizing real communities over digital validation. Corporate media thrives on outrage and division, which is why I can't stand it. Refusing to engage weakens its influence, right? I always thought if we had a news site that just proposed the solutions to what other news sites talk about would be ridiculous. But that's exactly what I mean, right? Preventing the outrage and division, but also reclaiming housing and land for the people. Okay, community land trust, cooperative housing, and repurposing abandoned property reduce dependency on corporate landlords, and strengthening local mutual aid networks, right? Solidarity economies where people directly provide for each other instead of relying on government handouts. But we also need to reject the psychological traps, right? Stop the cycle of outrage and distraction. The system relies on people constantly reacting instead of building alternatives, right? Also understanding that change doesn't come from asking for permission. Governments will never legislate themselves out of power. I'm sorry, I gotta let some of y'all down. And also seeing the illusion of material scarcity. Most struggle is artificially engineered to keep people in survival mode. The more people that step out of dependency on that system, the less power that has, right? But what happens if enough people do this? The system collapses, not through violence, right? A different type of revolution, irrelevance, right? Here's what the system really fears most. A workforce that is no longer financially trapped in wage slavery, and a population that no longer depends on the government for survival, and an economy that no longer funnels wealth into monopolized industries. What this will lead to is a parallel economy that grows outside of the state corporate control, built on local production and direct exchange, right? Breakdown of financial control systems as people refuse predatory banking and corporate monopolization, in a realignment of social power where people realize that state and corporations need them more than they need the system. What happens when the game isn't worth playing anymore? That's the question. Okay, the only power the system has is the belief. It doesn't control money, people do. It doesn't own land, people live on it. It doesn't create productivity, workers do. It doesn't generate culture, communities do. The illusion of power crumbles when people stop consenting to the game. So the only way to break the superstructure loop that capitalism is contained in is just to stop believing in it. It's not to fight it, not to reform it. It's to make it outright obsolete.